Hi there and welcome to everybody joining us live on the This Is Ibrox Wednesday warm-up. I'm joined by two fantastic guests as always. Firstly, I'm joined by Kyran Ross. How are you today, Kyran?
Good, thanks, Kyle. I'm just sitting here scratching my head wondering what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, it was. Sometimes it's difficult to come up with subjects. It was not tonight. You're very right there. And Ross, I think the last time I was on a podcast with you, Michael Beale's peg was getting sugarier. I think we were pretty negative about a 4-0 result against Livingston to put us into the semi-finals. How are you and how are you doing after all that?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I think we seen what was coming that night. Actually, after a 4-0 result, it was quite weird to maybe feel a wee bit negative after that. But look, this is what's transpired. I think the last podcast I was on, I was quite negative as well. I feel like I was ranting about the manager. So I'm glad I'm kind of back tonight, and we can maybe analyse the candidates and maybe a bit more calm about things now that you know Michael Beale has left. But yeah, ultimately, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. As you've just said there, we're going to touch on some of the potential candidates. I know there's breaking news with this stuff all the time, and there's wee snippets we're getting. Even in the last sort of couple of hours, there's been some stuff coming out. We'll get the guys' thoughts on some of the guys. We'll see if there's a need for a director of football or a sporting director. I think the last time I mentioned this, I was getting told that there's a difference between the two. I'm not really too sure what that is, but we'll see if the guys think that. We'll discuss a wee bit some of the first press conference for interim manager Stephen Davis and James Tavernier. We're at that one today, and then we'll have a wee look ahead for Rangers' second group match in the Europa League away to Cyprus against Aris Limassol. Look, Kyran, we'll just get straight into it. What did you make of that decision? Obviously late in Sunday evening, but maybe other than the sort of sacking of Beale, the sort of quickness of the board and the decision to bring Stephen Davis and that management team in.
I think it's been planned. I think they knew the writing was on the wall, as did all of we. I don't know if that makes sense. All of us. But being at Ibrox at the weekend was the most toxic atmospheres I've ever been in. So the writing was just about on the wall, and I think we could have said it would have been before the end of the weekend. I think they've acted fast. A lot of people said they should have acted after the Celtic game. I don't know if that would have been too fast. I know we're 7 points behind now, and the fear is that we've gift-wrapped them another league. But I think it's early enough maybe to claw things back. There's a lot of football still to be played. So in terms of the staff coming in, I'll be honest, I don't think any of us seen it being Stephen Davis. I know everyone was like, who's going to take the team on Thursday? There's no UEFA Pro licence amongst anyone at the club and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden it's Stephen Davis with a sort of backing crew, Alex Ray, Gilmore and Stephen Smith. And yeah, let's just look and see how it goes. Davis himself commands a lot of respect, being a Hall of Famer at the club. And I'd like to see him just steady the ship for the next guy coming in. But we could have made worse appointments the last time when it was David McCallum and he was like a rabbit in the headlights. No offence to him, but he's not managed on that scale before when we were in the semi-final against Hibs.
Yeah, no, that's it exactly. It's it was a very interesting one. I think from a personal point of view, I know the listeners will be bored of me saying that Stephen Davis is my absolute all-time favourite player. I was delighted when you were obviously saddened that Beale's gone. Right decision 100%, but delighted that the board have chosen Stephen Davis in a coaching team to come in and fulfil that role. Ross, what's your thoughts in particular how quickly that decision was made? Because it was certainly criticism of the previous board that after that Hearts game, even the St Johnstone game, stuff like that they were taking too long to let the manager go. Are you happy at how quickly the decision was made? And what do you make of the fact that they've decided to appoint Stephen Davis as the interim manager?
Yeah, well, I think the board have been decisive here, haven't they? And I think they were kind of forced into it. After Ibrox this weekend, I'm with Kyran. That was probably the most toxic environment I've been in for a long time. I think anyone left in the ground at full time was there purely just to vent their frustrations. It wasn't to show any sort of appreciation to the team or to be there when the final whistle goes. Because I know a lot of people I'm like that myself, right? I stay to the end all the time, but even I felt a lot of frustration at the end, and I think it was justified. So I think the board deserve credit for how decisive they've been. I think they had to be. It's quite clear that Michael Beale's not getting a tune out of their squad. He's not been getting a tune out of their squad for a while. So ultimately, I think he had to be moved on. As for, the coaching staff coming in, Stephen Davis was a bit of a surprise to me. I think once he's then appointed and you start to think about it, it does kind of make sense. He's in the background at the moment. He has an injury. He has a lot of experience. He's worked with these players before. And really, in an interim basis, you're maybe just wanting that a little bit of familiarity within the squad. So not too surprised once you have a think about it. I think the one that surprised me was Alex Ray. Really? Didn't really see that one coming at all. But he does have good coaching experience. He's worked with Red in the last couple of years with Paul Ince. So I think he managed to keep them up one year. I think the following year it wasn't too great, but he is coming in with that coaching experience. Then the guys like Stephen Smith, who's in the academy, Brian Gilmore is the same. So it is a good collection of staff, I think, and it's a good opportunity for Stephen Davis. I doubt that Stephen Davis is going to be the long-term Rangers manager, right? But he keeps talking about, and every time we've heard from him now, that it's something he has been thinking about and something he wants to plan, and it's an opportunity he couldn't turn down. So, yeah, I'm happy with the appointment. Obviously, only on an interim basis. We need to find a more experienced, more qualified manager, whether that's an interim coming in till the end of the season or we try and find someone to appoint for the long term. I'm not sure what way that's going to go, but Stephen Davis right now to get us through these next 2 games makes complete sense for me.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You think saying the next 2 games, if that's how long you think his internship's going to be. But yeah, I think that's probably about right. And really hard to disagree with anything you both said there. I'm delighted. I think it's a sensible decision just to, I think it was you that said it, steer the ship and just keep us going for the next few games. Right. Kyran, let's get into it. Let's look at some of the potential managerial candidates. The way I've sort of tried to do this is I've sort of bracketed it into sort of 3 things. Looked at sort of win percentage at their previous clubs, seen as that is what we want as Rangers supporters. We want to know their win percentage, style of play, sort of formations, and the other thing is the trophies that they have won. As I said, there's one candidate out of the sort of 4 big ones we'll sort of touch on that's got a lot more trophies than the other. But the first one I want to talk about is Frank Lampard. The guy, arguably the name that's been mentioned the most, probably because most people have been saying that they don't want him as the Rangers manager. I can sort of see the thinking in terms of the Steven Gerrard mould. Obviously, we know that he's been at Derby, Chelsea, Everton. He favours a 4-3-3 formation. He has picked up 0 major accolades as a manager. 46% was his win rate with Derby, 50% with Chelsea. It was 27% with Everton, and this blew my mind. He had a 9% win rate when he was caretaker manager at Chelsea the second time round. What's your thoughts on Frank Lampard, and can you see why he's on the shortlist?
Absolutely no way do I want to see Frank Lampard in the dugout at Ibrox. Like, maybe if you threw this at me after his spell at Derby where he actually done okay, then all right. But my Lord, that second spell at Chelsea was horrific. Like, that was really bad. I think I remember reading a stat that had he took over a month previous to that, they would have been fighting relegation. Didn't they finish 14th or something? Like, somewhere ridiculous like that, and it just looked like they had no plan, and he had just been told he was getting a big wad of money to be here, and that's the way I seen it. But nah, absolutely not for me. I think it's a bit of a lazy link. I can't see him even being considered for it. At least I hope so. I just don't think it's the one that the fans would buy into. I think the next appointment the fans have got to buy into. At the end of the day, we're a modern football club, and it's our brand that we're trying to protect, and the higher ups will want someone that is a big name and that'll attract the fans, and we just want a better brand of football and trophies coming back in. That's all really, and I don't think Lampard brings that.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you there. Ross, your thoughts on Lampard?
I'd get Frank Lampard in tomorrow. No, I'm only joking. I'm exactly the same as you both. Frank Lampard, for me, it's kind of like damaged goods a wee bit at the moment in terms of he's been around so many clubs and he's not really made the impact, or he's had certain stints at clubs, if you know what I mean, right? I know it's only been the 2 since Derby, but The Everton job, I think he started okay, managed to keep them up, but he didn't really have a defined style of play. I think he reverted from really all the principles he had at Chelsea that obviously didn't go too well from there either. Kind of reverted, went to that kind of sit deep, try and hit teams in the counter-attack, and he managed to keep them up. So I suppose there's certain credit for that. But then it fell away the next season. And then his stint at Chelsea that time. I understand that Chelsea are in a pretty, I was going to say difficult position. I mean, having lots of money probably isn't a difficult position, but you understand, the recruitment model's all over the place, right? And he's trying to deal with the club essentially buying players and throwing them at him. So it's not an easy circumstance to work in. We've seen that with Mauricio Pochettino this season already. Chelsea are only starting to really get going now. But he's not done enough for me, really, to be the Rangers manager. He really hasn't. And I've seen this argument before, in terms of we brought Steven Gerrard in and even Michael Beale, right, with very little experience. And Frank Lampard is the opposite. He does have plenty of experience now, but it's not the experience I'm looking for. It's not good experience. He's ultimately been down the bottom of the league with both teams now. He's not done enough for me to be linked with this job. I think it just comes down to the name. He's Frank Lampard. He's a big draw. And we can't argue against that. If he was appointed Rangers manager, there would be more eyes on the club again, very much like Steven Gerrard. We can't deny it, but that doesn't mean he's the right fit for the club. I'd like to think that the club are just looking at as many candidates as possible, which I think they should always do. They should be open to any route to go down with a manager, but he is just one I don't want to see. I think he would command a big salary as well. I don't want us to go anywhere near Frank Lampard. I would rather us take even a riskier appointment as such, because we're not as aware of the manager as we are Frank Lampard. It's a no for me completely. I need these links to die off now, Kyle. It's been a couple of days of them. I'm sick of them now. I seen the one, I think the Telegraph broke it yesterday, that he was open to discussions, and then there was, I can't remember the other journalist's name, forgive me, but he was saying, Frank Lampard spoke to Rangers a few times. Well, Frank Lampard needs to pack it in now, right? He spoke to us a few times and he's not getting it. Let's just move on and let's stop bringing him in for talks, and we'll just forget this ever happened.
Do you ever remember when he was at Derby and they got to the playoffs against Leeds? They turned Leeds over, and then he was in front of the crowd giving it the whole "Stop Crying, Frank Lampard" despised it stuff. And then the bar bill was leaked for that night. It was like thousands of pounds. And then they get turned over by Aston Villa in the final. Imagine that happening up here. We would be up in arms. That's red flags all over it. He's done a good job, thinks he's won something, he's not, and then they get turned over, and next minute it's Summit Plummet for Derby County in the Championship.
Yeah, listen, you're totally right. I mean, that's the thing. There's lots of comments in here. Alan's homemade vlog says, apart from his first stint at Chelsea, appointment after Lampard has been a serial failure. And looking at those win percentages, I don't know any manager that's been in any job that's had a 9% win rate. And I said everybody else seems to be, largely agreeing with it as well. Scott Hammond here says board could never sell Lampard to the fans, and I think that's spot on the money there. If we're already all saying no, it's going to be a really difficult sell. And loads of comments like this. RFC 72, Bisgrove is looking at Lampard licking his lips with the marketing side and ways to make money off him. Can't deny that, to be honest with you. The next one I want to come in and ask you about here, Kyran, and this seems to be the sort of name he's been mentioned about for a wee while. Obviously, former Rangers player Kevin Muscat. When I was doing my bit of research on him today, I didn't realise that he actually has had a lot of jobs within football. He's been assistant manager a few times at a couple of different clubs. He's been a technical director. Obviously, looking at the sort of negative side of things, it'd be a fee to go in and get him. Looking at his win rate, at Melbourne, I think he was there for about 5-6 years. He got a 47.5% win rate, won an Australian title over there. His time with St Truden, not so great. Maybe the only sort of black mark against him. He had a poor win rate there, 14%, only lasted, I think it was 11, 12 games, something like that. Then obviously he's at Yokohama in Japan at the minute, 57% win rate, won a title over there. And I think he's won a Japanese Super Cup, you would call it as well. What's your thoughts on a guy like Kevin Muscat being linked with the job? And for me, he seems to be the sort of front runner, the favourite at the moment.
It does seem to be, but don't know. I hate to come on and be too negative because I like to try and be balanced, but I'm just not enthused by any of the names that's been thrown at, and Muscat is one of them. I know that our group chat's pretty split on Muscat, and I just don't think this conversation would be happening had Ange not been successful at Celtic.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, right? I've not done my research on Muscat because I don't believe it'll be him, but from all the reports today suggest that there's going to be initial interviews with him. Again, it reeks of project manager. I genuinely thought we would try and move away from that and bring in someone that was ready-made to come in and put us back in the right direction. I just don't know if that man's Muscat, if I'm honest. I'd be delighted to be proven wrong, but I don't know. I'm open-minded about it, but I just don't think he's the right man for the job. I think we need a bigger name than that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. And Ross, what do you think about Kevin Muscat? Are you very much in the same camp that if a certain manager on the other side of the city didn't have the experience that he had up here, would Muscat even be in the running for the Rangers job?
I think there's definitely an element of truth to that. I think it's well known that Kevin Muscat is kind of followed along from Ange Postecoglou's style at Yokohama. He's took it on. He's arguably made it even better, I suppose. But in that region, should I say? I suppose that's a bit of a wild thing to say in terms of here. But just in Japan, it looks like he's got the team playing well. Like you said, he's got a lot of experience as well, different roles within football. And I think he does play quite an attractive brand of football that Rangers fans, I think, are really looking for at this stage. We're looking for something that maybe back to when Steven Gerrard came in the first, and maybe the second year he came in, where you could really see a team starting to form there. You could see the patterns of play, that if a player came out, one went back in, and it was very much the same style. I think that's what we're looking for again. And Kevin Muscat is probably someone that would bring us that. I'm probably like Kyran as well, that I'm not too enthusiastic about him. There's other names that we might go on to that definitely interest me more. Pascal Jansen that's been linked. He is someone that interests me a wee bit more. His background in Europe looks a wee bit better and things. So, yeah, he's not a name really for me, Kyle, that gets me too excited. But I think Kieran said it at the beginning here, and don't want to be too negative. I think all the names are like that at the moment, unfortunately. There's not really anyone jumping out. We might have to be patient on that. The club might have something up their sleeve that we're not aware of. Hopefully that is the case. But I certainly think out of the candidates we've been linked to so far, Kevin Muscat is probably one of the better ones. I think that's the better way to describe it. So it'll be interesting to see what comes from that. Of course, we've heard today that there are some sort of meetings between the club and Kevin Muscat planned. I find that interesting that information has been given out. I didn't expect to hear that, to be honest, how public it would be in terms of an interview. Mm-hmm. But that clearly shows that the club do have some sort of interest in him. Whether that means he's going to be the next Rangers manager, well, it doesn't. But there's definitely some sort of interest there. So it'll be interesting to see how that one develops.
Yeah, it will be. It's there's another interesting comment here from RSC72. He says, if Muscat comes, I'd probably guarantee Moore comes with him in a director of football role, which is definitely something I want to touch on later. But I think very much, there's a couple of names to come on to, but very much the sort of overwhelming feeling so far is that none of the names particularly are exciting anybody. But I'll come on to that after. Ross, I'm going to stick with you in the next name, so you've already mentioned them. That's Pascal Jansen. Obviously, I know in the last sort of couple of hours he's come out in the Dutch media and he said, I don't know if there's been any contact with AZ, but there's been no contact with me. I've also received it, and I've received some messages from England, but I don't know where it came from. It's completely out of the question. I think I'm not sure. I don't know if that's a mistranslation out of the question. I'm not sure entirely what context that's in terms of it's out of the question that he's coming to Rangers, but he's been linked with us. He's allegedly one of the guys on this short list. Obviously, he's worked as one of these coaches that's worked his way through the managerial ranks. Like, if you're looking at a manager and you want to see a good CV, he's certainly got it. Ticked all the boxes in terms of coaching at PSV Eindhoven. I think he was under 19s, under 21s, and then a technical director for them for a wee bit. He's got experience in European competitions, has a 4-3-3 favourite sort of formation, but he's won no silverware and he's relatively inexperienced. What's your thoughts on Pascal Jansen, Ross?
Yeah, I think Pascal Jansen's the one that interests me the most at the moment. I had to reread yesterday some analytical pieces on him. I wish I could actually plug them because they were very good, but I can't remember them. So unfortunately, whoever wrote them, I apologise for that. But yeah, I read quite a lot about the manager yesterday in terms of how he plays. He actually sets the team up very similarly to how we play at the moment, which I know a lot of people will go, not really. Why would you want a manager like that? But I suppose if you can get someone in that suits the squad we have and can get more out of them and ensure that style is more efficient and more effective, then it's probably an option that the club will look at. I suppose that's the way they looked at it with Michael Beale as well. Has been able to work with players at AZ, relatively limited budget. Of course, they have really good recruitment, so that, you know, if the club are recruiting the players for him and he's getting the best out of them, I suppose you can look at it either way. The manager's doing his job and the club are facilitating that. Mm-hmm. But he's definitely, just when I was reading about him, like you said, some of the experience you spoke about there as well, he's got a bit behind him, and especially with European football as well, which I think is something that's going to be held against Kevin Muscat. Unfortunately, right, his record with, I think it was St. Truden, was pretty poor. And maybe it's quite harsh, you know, managers can go into roles that don't necessarily fit them, or they don't have the squad they need to play their style, whatever. There's obviously circumstances you're not aware of sometimes, but I think that will definitely go against them when it comes to the Rangers fans. Not all of them, but some. Whereas I think Jansen's got that experience behind him, and I think I've watched quite a bit of AZ now because I read that the other day, and they do look pretty exciting. I think they're second in the Dutch league at the moment. I might be incorrect about that. I think they've scored like a record, like 20 goals, conceded 3. Right? So yeah, so they're flying right now. Of course, that's just this season, but you can go back and look at the previous seasons, and he's managed to get them to a really competitive level, competing with all the big teams in the Dutch league with, you know, a fraction of the resources. So that's something that encourages me. Again, something that is probably worth reiterating at the moment. He looks like a manager that works well under a club that has a really good structure behind it. Do we have that at the moment? I'm not sure. So if you put a manager like that into a club like ours, where we potentially don't have our director of football and things like that, and the structure isn't there, is it optimal for him? Are you going to get the best out of him? I'm not sure. And that's maybe why the club wouldn't go down that route. But like all these suggestions and candidates, Kyle, there's pros and cons for them all. But he is certainly the one that I'm the most interested in at this point.
Yeah, Kyran. So Steve G here says Jansen is the Dutch Beale, no more project managers. If that's not enough to instantly put you off somebody, I don't know what it is. But out of all the guys we've talked about, he's got the most impressive win record, 61% win record. As Ross says there, he's got his AZ Alkmaar team playing some nice slick football, you know, high scoring goals, similar formation, but he's not won any silverware. Is that a concern from you? I know that he's had that statement earlier on, but would you still be interested in a guy like Pascal Jansen for the manager's job at Rangers?
I would, yeah, I would. This is one I'm going to go along with Ross with here, that I'd say yes, possibly out of the candidates that have all been mentioned, that I would be. Attacking style of football, 61% win rate, like Ross says, like we can't sort of scoff at that. The silverware is the only box that's not really ticked there, but it is a sort of, not like I was going to say a fresh appointment, like a name that many of the fans probably would never have heard of before he was mentioned in the context of being the next Rangers manager. And I think that's what we need, something a wee bit fresh, something a bit new, and I think he would be the one for that. I think it was TalkSport mentioned him, and that's where the sort of link has come from. And if I'm right in saying, didn't De Boer and Newman throw their weight behind him?
Yeah. Instantly, so, almost.
Yeah, so these guys know what they're talking about. So that always bodes well. So for me, it'd be one of these ones. I'd be very open-minded if you come in and let's see what you can do.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Hugo Bear here says Jansen is too inexperienced, you know, which is, I get where the two of you are coming from in terms of it, but for me, I think this appointment's just a bit too similar to Beale, and I think the same criticisms would. I know I had a bit of a laugh when we said that he was the Dutch Michael Beale, but there's too many similarities. I think we need somebody in that's won something. And speaking of that, Kyran, I'll stick with you here. A guy that I wasn't that aware of up until a couple of days ago, and that's Philippe Clement, a Belgian manager. out of the four sort of main ones we're going to talk about, now by far has the most impressive trophy haul. I think he's got 7 trophies, won 4 Belgian championships with 2 different clubs, which I think is important. Won a Belgian Cup and 2 Belgian Super Cup winners. 2 Belgian Super Cups. At Genk, he had a 57% win rate. Club Brugge, the exact same. Monaco, a 50% win rate. Didn't have a great season last season. Maybe that's why we're sort of being linked with a guy of this caliber. Interestingly enough, sort of favours a 4-4-2 formation. But I know, again, sort of later on today, there's been links with him in Saudi Arabia, which might rule him out entirely. But what do you think about Philippe Clement as a prospect for Rangers manager?
Yeah, I had a quick read up on him before we came on, and I think his more recent history at Monaco didn't make for good reading. They finished 7th in the league. I think he lost 6 of his last 7 games and found themselves outside the European spots, which previous to that, I think they didn't qualify for the Champions League, if I'm right in saying as well, and then get knocked out in the knockout rounds by Bayer Leverkusen for the Europa. So doesn't really bode well on that level, but he's quite a successful CV from what he'd done at Club Brugge. And yeah, I actually think he started out as a scout there, went into caretaker, then assistant, and then got the manager's job. So it just shows he's a good calibre of manager and coach. And yeah, a wee bit like yourself, out of the unknown with Clement. So people seem to be taking to it. I don't know enough about him, but when Saudi wave cash at you, then I think you'd rather go to the sunny climates of Saudi than rainy Scotland.
Yeah, and Ross, I think rather than ask you specifically about Philippe Clement, there's a whole host of other names that have been out there. I'm going to give you the job of, your Wilders, your Allardyces. Who else has been linked with us? I'm trying to think.
Billy Davis.
Davis. The one though, about all them that's kind of excited me though was Marcelo Gallardo. What do you think? Is there any other candidates that you have in mind, or what do you think about all these other names? I know I've said most of the names and I'm shuddering as I say them.
Yeah, I really don't see any truth in any of the other names, to be honest. I think Marcelo Gallardo, a fantastic record at River Plate. But I think there was rumours floating around that Leeds were interested in him either last season or maybe this summer. Can't remember. And he was asking for astronomical wages and a huge salary, which we're never going to go anywhere near. So I think that rules that one out. He's clearly taking his time and trying to get the next job for him that takes him to the next level. I'm not sure Rangers and the SPFL is that for him. I think that one's a wee bit unrealistic. As for your kind of Sam Allardyce, Billy Davis, I couldn't believe when I read that this morning. That is just ridiculous. I think he's been out of work for 9 years now. I don't even know why he's been mentioned in the same breath as the Rangers job. I really don't get that one. Chris Wilder, right? I'm not endorsing that one, but that was one I actually did think about originally when Beale was let go. Not as a long-term permanent manager, but I wondered if Rangers would look at him as an interim for the season. And I understand he's not a really attractive name, right? But he did do really well with Sheffield United down south. He actually played 3 at the back, and he played a really expansive 3 at the back, which is something we spoke about for a while as Rangers fans. Like, can we play a 3? So I thought maybe that one, I could see it. I think he was referenced as being as one of the 4 candidates that was breaking the other night that Rangers were looking at. Whether we believe that or not, there's only 4, I'm not sure, but he was on it. So that one I could maybe see and I could maybe understand, but the rest of them, Sam Allardyce and that, no, absolutely no chance. No chance. I want to see for so long now, we have not seen good football at Ibrox. I need to see good football. It doesn't necessarily have to be really aggressive, high-pressing football, but I just want to see when we're in possession, can I just see a wee bit of pattern in our play? Can I see our players linking up well? We don't have any of that at the moment. So guys like Sam Allardyce, I think they've had their time, good records down south, but yeah, we'll put that one to the side. I just want us, it's probably a conversation worth having. I don't know if this is the podcast for it or there's another podcast to dig into it, but it's probably about what you value for this next Rangers manager. Like, what is the most important? Because like I said before, all of these managers have pros and cons behind them. For me personally, I think we need to see a really attractive style of football, something that the fans can buy into, the club can get behind, the players buy into, and ultimately bring performances and better results. I think that's what we need. I know we need experience in the manager as well. I get it. And that would be fantastic. But for me, I think all the top clubs now, they play really good football. I think the days are gone where you can sit deep or you can sit off teams, whatever. I just want to see a better brand of football. I think ultimately that will bring us success in the long term.
Yeah, you're completely right. We're not asking much as Rangers supporters. We just want a good brand of football, to be winning all the time and to be happy all the time. So it's easy enough there. By the way, I actually thought when you were speaking there, you were going to say what we need to see is this Rangers team with a handbrake off and trigger everybody in the in the comments. I know, trigger everybody in the comments again. But listen, Kyran, there's a couple of things before we move on and talk about the Aris game that I want to sort of go into. A couple of comments coming in here. One was from Steve G, and he says we need a DOF. We can't trust Bisgrove picking the next manager. It is interesting that Bisgrove's missing the game tomorrow to help out with stuff like that. And RFC 72 here says, when we're talking about Philippe Clement, he said, I'd rather Monaco's director of football. I think that's Paul Mitchell, I want to say his name is.
Right,
yeah, but if he came, I wouldn't mind. What do you think? This is a role that maybe I've personally sort of underestimated in the last few seasons at Rangers, but all the major clubs have directors of football, sporting directors. Is this something that we need to have? Because I get that impression of this board that I don't think we're getting one anytime soon.
I do, yeah, I certainly do. Like for like contingency planning and stuff like that. Look at the mess we were left in with how Ross Wilson done the role. In terms of contracts, like the squad needed freshening up. Like we can't afford to have a rebuild at the end of every other season. Like that can't happen again. So for me, you do need someone in for the football side of things that will take care of that. James Biz, I just don't feel that's within the remit of what James Bisgrove should be responsible for. So for me, yes, in the modern game, that is very, very important that you do have this figure at the top. Whether it comes before or after the manager's appointed is a whole different story and probably for a different show. But yeah, for me, it is a tough one. I think, I'm not sure, I think it was RFC 72 commented on it about Paul Mitchell coming along with the ex-Monaco manager.
Yeah.
For me, I think that, I know that's pie in the sky stuff, but for me, having a link between the manager and the director of football is very, very important. We've seen it with Mark Allen and Gerrard, and it seemed to work to an extent. So I think there has to be a previous relationship between the manager and the director of football. And I know they say that you shouldn't have your manager have a say in your director of football, but when there's previous relationships there and it can work and it's proven to work, then I can see a case for it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. I was maybe not so fussed about a director of football, but now I'm like, maybe we do kind of need it. There's a few comments coming in here, Ross. I'm going to bring Steve G. He says, Souness and McCoist advised Bisgrove in the appointment of the interim team. And Malt Whiskey here says, who's going to advise Bisgrove? We should be getting in the likes of Souness, Gordon Smith and Craig Moore involved. I know there was a lot of discussion about some of these sort of old Rangers heads within the This Is Ibrox WhatsApp group, but what do you make of the director of football role? Would you rather we went out and sorted that out first before we brought a manager in? And is there anybody that you think would be suitable for that role?
Oh, in terms of anyone suitable for that role, I'm not sure, because it's not the same as managers of it, as it's not as obvious. I know that we were linked with Paul Mitchell, was it? Yeah, from leaving Monaco, but I think there's rumours going around that if Jim Ratcliffe gets his bid pushed through at Manchester United, he'll appoint Paul Mitchell as their director of football. So again, I'm going to say that we're probably not in the market for him. He's probably out of our range, unfortunately. In terms of the role itself, yeah, I think we need it. I was on this podcast when Ross Wilson left the club, and I said exactly the same thing. We need to try and find another director of football to take over. Continuity in there is really good. Definitely a club at the size of the Rangers. I actually think not having a director of football probably impacted Michael Beale, if we're honest. He went from being obviously a coach for years assistant to Steven Gerrard. He's then moved to QPR. He had the director of football at QPR. I believe it was Les Ferdinand at QPR at the time. So he could purely focus on the coaching and managing those players. He's then moved to Rangers. I know he had Ross Wilson for a while, but once Ross Wilson left, it was very much left to him. You're hearing stories about Michael Beale flying to Italy to meet players and things. It's the middle of a season. I just thought, you're doing things that I wouldn't really expect a first-team manager nowadays in modern football to do. And I think that took away from him a wee bit. I think he had way more to contend with that he probably felt he had to when he first came into the role with Ross Wilson being there. And I think if you probably asked him now and you look back, he probably felt the impact of Ross Wilson leaving. I know there was a lot of chat around Ross Wilson at the time that he wasn't the right fit for the club anymore. And even though I defended Ross Wilson at certain points, I could definitely understand where people were coming from on that. But I always feel that role should be something we have at Rangers now. The director of football for Rangers has done a lot of good in the last 4 or 5 years. I know we pretend they haven't, but the structure behind the scenes, there is a decent structure there now in terms of the academy, the women's team, the recruitment. Of course, it's getting a bit of headlines at the moment, but overall, we've been able to get back to a level again where we all wanted to get to. Dropped off a wee bit now, right? But we've got to make our way back. Overall, I think the role is good for us. And I think it just takes a wee bit off of the manager and allows them to focus on the first team. Having said that, and you asked me at the start of this question around, what is, do we potentially hold off appointing a manager and get a director of football first? That would be my preference, honestly. If we could identify a really top caliber director of football and say he's only willing to start at the end of the year or something, I don't know, hypothetical situation here, I would rather we held off on appointing a manager and try and get a director of football in first and let him put things in place and let him be part of the recruitment for a new manager, because that relationship between the two roles is really, really important. So that would be my preference. I understand that might not be the route the club are going to go down. I think they might want a permanent manager in instantly or in the next couple of weeks. But I think it's certainly, regardless of whether we appoint a manager and then go for a director of football, I think we need to find one. I think it just gives us structure as a club, continuity between managers leaving and coming. I just think it makes sense for us, the size of club that we are, Kyle.
Yeah, listen, see if you'd asked me 6, 7, 8 months ago when Wilson, well, it was even as long as that. I think it was April, wasn't it, when Wilson left? I would have said, nah, I'm not that bored. I don't think it's an important role, but I do. Robert Binney here says, is this not the reason that we are where we are at the moment? So, yeah, I think that's a fair comment. Look, we do have a game of football to talk about tomorrow, so I suppose we should talk about that. Kyran, I'll come to you on this. Aris Limassol, who set 5th in their Cyprus. Oh God, I knew I was going to mess that word up. Yeah, the league in Cyprus. That's what I'll call it, right? Tav. It was obviously Tav and Davis at the presser today. I think Tav said, we expect a challenge tomorrow. They like to press and catch teams in the counter-attack, so we have to be well balanced. We expect an open game of football, but we have full belief in this team to get the job done tomorrow night. And interestingly enough, Stephen Davis said it'd been an intense few days trying to watch as much footage as possible. Aris has changed the system 3 times in the last 5 games, and the boys are well prepared to go tomorrow night. What are you expecting from Aris Limassol tomorrow, and how are you expecting Rangers to play in that game?
To be honest, I don't really know what to expect from them. I listened to a podcast earlier on them, and they were saying that basically they've got a lot of cash. They've come through the ranks in separate football. I think they garner around about 500 fans a game in this new stadium that they've got. So it'll almost be like we're the home support, considering the crowd that we carry near and far in Europe. So in terms of Limassol, I think, if I'm right, they came out against Prague absolutely flying and scored in the first 10 minutes. I hope that doesn't happen with us, because I'm not sure we're at the right stage mentally to be dealing with that as fans or a team. But for us, I think we want to see a spirited performance. We deserve it, and we deserve so much better than what we've seen at the weekend. So in terms of the game tomorrow, I would bite the hand off you for going 6 points in that group already. It would go a long, long way. And do you know what? It would probably bode well for a new manager coming in when they look at that and say, do you know what? I could get through that group. I've got a semi-final coming up here as well. Maybe the league's not quite out of reach. That's the type of thing that we want to be looking at tomorrow night. So good to see Kemar Roof back. Good to see Raskin back. Interesting to see that Davis said they could be involved tomorrow. So, no, why not? Why can we not go there and beat them? Like, with all due respect, they're the weakest team in the group. So, let's go. Let's go and beyond 6 points in the group tomorrow night.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. Hopefully we do go over there and get a result. Ross, I think the sort of danger man for Aris Limassol that I was looking at, and again, if I can't even say Cypriot right, I don't know if I'll be able to say this name right, but it's Xavi Babika. He's a Gabonese right winger. He's their danger man. He scored 13 goals already this season, which is pretty impressive. And he's had 7 of those in European competitions, whether that be the Champions League qualifications, Europa League qualifications, and I think he scored the goal the last match day for Aris as well. But how are you expecting Rangers to sort of combat this? They seem to be a team with pace. Are you worried at all the way our defence is playing at the minute, or do you think that we will have too much for them?
No, I think strangely, if their system is a lot about pace, I think it kind of suits us because we don't press really aggressively. I suppose you might see a different team tomorrow under Stephen Davis. He might set us up completely different. But we tend to set off teams. There's not really a lot of space, so I'm not too concerned. I think, I'll be honest with you, I haven't done a lot of research on Aris Limassol, but I think it's a tie I really expect us to go and win. I'd like to think the squad look at it this way as well. If you can go there, Kyran alluded to it, if you can go over there in the second group game and you can come out with 6 points after 2 games, you've got a great chance of going through this group, and you could wrap up early. And ultimately, that's what we should be striving for every time. So I'm not too concerned tomorrow. I think you always see when there's a manager change, you instantly see a little lift in the squad. I expect to see that tomorrow. I expect to see a wee bit of a better performance. And maybe seeing guys like Nicholas Raskin come back in will really help us in there. A wee bit more energy in there for a tie like this is really good. So, yeah, look, when you get to this level, Kyle, it's never a gimme. It's always difficult games, especially away in European competitions. We've seen so many times, Rangers struggle. So I'm not expecting an easy game, but I'd like to see Rangers go out, take the initiative in the game, and really go for it. I think that's what I would like to see tomorrow, especially when, in a way, the kind of pressure's off. The manager's left, right? The permanent manager's left. Now Michael Beale, this is a squad. This is a chance, for this squad to go out and try and build some confidence again. European stage, early kickoff. I think it's all set up for them. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident for tomorrow, Kyle. I think we'll come away with the 3 points.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And Kyran, are you expecting a bit of a reaction tomorrow, sort of a difference in the way the players are playing? Because something as well you said, and I thought it initially when Davis said it in the press conference, was I was a bit surprised that Roof's back fit already, given what Beale was saying about him in the previous press conference. Do you think we will see a reaction tomorrow from the players?
It's kind of like that, do you know the Willy Wonka meme that goes about that strolls up to the gate with a walking stick and then does a forward roll and stuff?
Yeah.
Michael Beale left and that was Roof going, nah, I'm only kidding, that's disrespectful. No, to be fair, I think the timescale that was quoted for Raskin was around about the international break. I don't know if he'll start, to be honest. I don't know if it's one they would rush him back for. But yeah, Roof's a massive lift, and in terms of what we've got up front, it's slim pickings, it's harsh right at the moment. I do not think that any Rangers fan would be excited about watching a game when New Dessers was starting at the moment. Yeah. And I feel bad saying that. He has shown all the hallmarks of this and the signs of a striker completely devoid of any confidence whatsoever, and it's just one of the ones he probably needs one to ricochet off his arse and go in the net, and then he's on a roll again, and he's the fans' hero. We've seen stranger things happen.
I know. But he's already had that, but he's had about 3 deflected goals.
Very true, aye. He's done the knee slides and the rest of it. So yeah. I don't know. It's still quite a slim squad at the moment. It's going to be a tough task for Davis. And what you said as well, Kyle, about Davis commenting on watching the tape, I genuinely thought about that on, what was it? So he would have got the phone call on Sunday night. We got the pictures of them boarding the flight yesterday. So he must be working right through the clock at the moment when you think he's took training as well.
Yeah.
And there's not a chance that he's watched anything to do with Limassol leading up to this game until now, where he's really got his homework. So you've got to think. So you've then got to take training, watch the tape, and then you've got to plan what you want to do, and then you've got to implement that to the team. It's quite a short space of time. It's interesting.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Ross, I'll come to you and ask you for your lineup in that game, given as well the fact that we've talked about that. I'm a bit shocked, Roof especially back. Do you think Raskin will feature in there? And then we'll get some of the guys' comments, some of the predicted lineups that they've got on there.
Yeah, I think it will be the same team from the weekend, other than Ridvan and Jack coming out for Borna. And I was actually thinking, I wonder if this is an opportunity for Bailey Rice tomorrow, genuinely, because of the options we have in midfield at the moment. Kyran made a good point there with Raskin that we maybe won't rush him back for this one. So I wonder if it's a really good opportunity to throw him in there. I understand it's European competition. He's only 16 years old, but again, Michael Beale was speaking about him and saying how good a player he is. You know, is this an opportunity for him in an environment that's maybe not going to be a hostile environment for him? Can go out there and show his best. So that's maybe one I'm thinking about. It's a bit of a curveball, I suppose. But I think other than that, Kel, the team kind of picks itself at the moment, doesn't it? There's not a lot of options. I'm sure there'll be a lot of young boys on the bench tomorrow that will maybe get their opportunity as well. So I'm not expecting a lot of surprises. I think it'll be very similar to the weekend.
Yeah, it will be very interesting. A couple of lineups here. The Trying Scotsman here says Butland, Tav, Goldson, Davies, Borna, Linney, Sifu, Jack, Lammer, Sima, and Dessers. I think the only change I had to that, I didn't. That was pretty much the team that I'd picked there. John Robertson here says 4 duds at the back, 3 fuds in the midfield, another 3 fuds up front. Well, it's like we can't say there's a fud in the dugout anymore. So there's that. And RFC 72 here says Butland, Tav, Goldson, Davies, Borna, Linney, Sifu, Lammer, Sima, Dessers, and a curveball with either Lyle or McCausland, which I think could be very interesting indeed. Obviously, I know that hearing Ross McCausland talking about Stephen Davis even before all this stuff sort of kicked off, it was really good. I think Reese was there for us at the B team press conference, and he was singing Stephen Davis's praises. Maybe he knew something that we didn't know at that time, but I know they're both fellow countrymen. It'd be really interesting to see. Right, before we wrap it up tonight, guys, I'm just going to get a wee quick score prediction off you both, and I'll come to you first, Kyran.
I'm going to go Limassol 1, Rangers 2.
Yeah, you had me worried there for a second.
It's a cliffhanger. And do you know something? I don't want to just sit and watch this game. I feel like all I've watched this season is Dessers running towards a keeper to shut him down. That's all I feel like I've watched this season.
Yeah.
Wee bit of attractive football, ball into the striker's feet. Let's not get too caught up in just forcing the ball wide to our fullbacks to be crossed into the box. The Stephen Davis revolution begins.
Yeah, that's it. Listen, you know, that's another conversation we can have on our pod. See if Davis does well in a few games. On you go.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, right? If he does well, right, I don't think he gets the job, but I think he'll be part of a coaching staff. And
yeah,
then
that's what I
the
think as well.
coaching staff does well, who's to say Stephen Davis won't be our future manager? Again, for another pod.
Listen, for what it's worth, I think Davis is perfect for management, the way he's the ultimate professional, and I think he'd be fantastically well suited for something like that. Ross, get your predictions in there.
Yeah, I just want to say I noticed a comment earlier from RFC 72 saying that Bailey Rice wasn't on the A list or the B list for this. So if he's not involved, then I apologise. I thought he was involved in the European squad, to be honest with you, the way Michael Beale was speaking about him. So you might be right there, RFC. I apologise if so. I think I'll go for 3-1 tomorrow, Kyle. I expect Limassol to score just the way we are at the moment, but I'm hoping we can see a much better performance from this Rangers team out there. And I was just about to use the phrase that Michael Beale has drummed into as the handbrake off. I was just about to say it.
We're a broken down ladder at the moment.
Yeah. I'd just like to see us be a wee bit more expansive. Like Kyran said there as well, I don't want it to just be everything funneled out to the fullbacks and try and get the ball in as early as possible. Let's just try and play a wee bit. There's an opportunity to go and do that. So let's hope we see it tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I think the team will have a bit of a new lease of life. It'll be interesting. I found it really interesting when Davis said in his press conference that he was going to let the players have their freedom back type thing. So maybe I'm reading in between the lines a wee bit too much then, but he's going to allow them to play with freedom. So yeah, I'm hoping for a good squad, and if these players, you know, don't show up and don't do it for A, the fact they play for Rangers Football Club, and B, the fact that Hall of Famer Stephen Davis, ex-teammate, you know, you could list his credentials. If you don't turn it up for him, then I'm sorry, I don't want you at the club anymore. So, but yeah, I'm going to go for I think I'm going to agree with you, Kyran. I'm not sure if I can see us not conceding. So I think I'll go with 2-1. But I'm just looking for a good performance, good result over there, and ultimately to get 6 points in the Europa League campaign. But listen, just want to say thank you to you both for joining me tonight. Thank you very much, Ross.
Yeah, thanks, Hill. Enjoyed it. Let's hope the Rangers get the 3 points tomorrow in this group stage.
That's it, exactly. And thank you very much, Kyran, for joining us tonight as well.
Always a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow. We'll keep it at that.
Yeah, that's it. There'll be a few of us that are having to zoom home from work to get there with that 5:45 kickoff. And I've been seeing in the comments well. One last thing before we go, see that Tam McCann, I think, had a bet on for Newcastle to beat PSG 4-1. So I'm hoping that comes up for you, big man. And yeah, just remember, get us on all the usual channels. Ross, you'll be live tomorrow post-match, will you? With just a wee 15-20 minute post-match reaction after the game?
I believe so, yeah. So, yep, tune in. You'll have a reaction from the game tomorrow.
Cool. And just remember, give us a like on all the usual social, guys. And thanks very much for all your comments and engagement. As always, it's been a pleasure. But take care and enjoy the game tomorrow night.